He's quite relaxed. Section of the game has a lot of typos. It was getting to that point in the translation, huh?
Only because after everything we've seen, we don't have the energy to keep being shocked.
How are you holding up, Rinwell? That whole talk about the Renans looked like it shook you up a bit.
Yeah. I get this
like, I'm sure that the translation takes a lot of work.
Mages like my family were persecuted and died out.
Somebody to go through, just like play the game through really fast. Who's a native English speaker to help fix the typos and little
if Renans
things
end
like
up
that.
living together
In
with
theory,
Danans
shouldn't
again,
take long.
then mages won't be such an unusual thing to see on Dana anymore, right? I know it's not as simple as all that, but Danans probably won't be so quick to let their guards down. And there might be Renans who still act superior because of their arts.
It wouldn't surprise me. 300 years of bad blood and prejudice isn't going to be an easy thing to overcome.
Yeah, I know firsthand just how much hatred can take hold in your heart once you let it in. But even so, I was still able to change. And if I can change, so can anyone else. So I was thinking maybe, I don't know, I could use my position as both a Danan and a mage to help bring both sides together.
Rinwell.
That great spirit worries me too, though. Dana's will feels so warm and inviting. So why is Rena's will trying to destroy our entire planet?
Now that you mention it, Everett 35 and the other scientists here never really brought that up. Maybe they don't know either.
Maybe. But regardless, at the end of the day, Dana's still our home. There's no way we can let it be destroyed.
We won't. We'll keep it safe no matter what.
Why is the great spirit of Rena so evil and wants to destroy anything? Well, I don't know. Maybe it just got salty because it didn't know that when it does a Google search, there's stuff on the first page and it doesn't just have to immediately jump to the second and third page. And then got mad when all the results were always weird things and freaking wanted to destroy the world and all that freaking yada yada.
Oh, it's you two. Does he seem like he's doing any better now?
He who? Oh, you mean Dohalim, don't you?
I know that we're all struggling to wrap our minds around it all, but he looked like he was taking it really hard earlier.
What do you think about everything we've learned? About the Renans and the Great Spirit and all that?
On some level, I'm not even really sure what to think, to be honest. I mean, the Great Spirit is like a huge natural disaster, but with a mind and will of its own. But if that thing's hellbent on trying to destroy our planet, then the only thing left for us to do is stop it. As for the Renans, I suppose my feelings on that are a bit more mixed.
How so?
Coexistence between Danans and Renans in Menancia is still a work in progress. In my case, I think that's partly because deep down, I was still on guard around Renans. So, to be told that they're like us, that they're actually just like us is, well, I guess it's a little deflating, to be honest.
You kept a pretty level head.
You mean about the Renans? At the end of the day, the Helganquil and the Great Spirit are the ones who are responsible. But at the same time, I realize that not every Danan is necessarily going to believe that either.
I know you're already aware of this, but the list of grievances the Danans have against the Renans is long, and understandably so. And if people then find out that they're all actually one and the same, yeah, I don't think they're going to take to it too kindly.
Even just among the Danans, I'm sure there'll be some who emerge with power and some who won't. I think if we can find a way to get rid of that imbalance, then we'll be in a truly good place.
Well, first we can try to figure out what to do about the existing conflicts we have.
Yeah. It'd be nice if one day people could learn to get past their hatred like Rinwell did.
It took her a while.
Task. We can't pretend like the past didn't happen and ask people to forget their very real pain and suffering.
Right. Everybody has their reasons for feeling the way that they do. But if we just keep yelling at each other about it, we'll never move on. In a worst-case scenario, it might lead to even more people getting killed.
And we all have to figure out how to meet halfway. Not just that, but to also embrace each other's pain in a sense.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
It's true. Everybody has their own scars, their own trauma. The first step to healing those wounds is to put aside that hatred. It won't be achieved through reasoning, but I think it's a good first step, if nothing else. And now, I think I see a way to move forward. But to do that, first we need to make sure our planet isn't going to get wiped out.
Yeah, first things first, let's take out Zanza. I mean, the great evil spear thing. That's that's do it all at stuff. Wait, it's a spirit that freaking inhabits slash controls the minds of its people. It literally is Zanza, isn't it? Well, that's neither here nor there. Okay, now there's a new purpose for this room. Now that there's like people coming in and stuff. But are Danans still not given surnames of their own? As crude of a tactic as it is, it's nonetheless an effective subjugation tool. But I suppose we aren't all that different, though grandiose sounding. Ours are simply a means to identify an individual's formative background. Well, I don't know about like dropping oxygen into like terraform Mars and Venus there, but it's more like we need to find ways to change the atmosphere there, not like add to. Well, it's complicated. It is complicated. It'd be a very tricky process.
I apologize for making you witness that.
You mean hearing the origins of the Renans?
Indeed. It's shocking to have so many things I thought to be indelible fade away in mere seconds.
Even I'm still not sure everything we've heard here is actually true.
Let's not delude ourselves. If what we've heard is a lie, it's a rather elaborate one. I can only imagine that you must have been constantly feeling like this, ever since your memory returned, Alphen. And you as well, Shion. About your thorns, and being a maiden.
That's just part of being alive, don't you think?
Well, to say the least. But enough about me. I'm not concerned for myself. What concerns me is all of the other Renans out there.
When you say the other Renans, you mean the ones that are living on Lenegis or Dana, right?
Correct. Even if we stop the Great Spirit from annihilating Dana, our problems will still remain. Putting aside the untold state that Rena may be in, if we do not truly belong there, we will have to think long and hard about where it is that we wish to return to.
So, I guess your only real choices at this point are to either stay on Lenegis or come down to Dana, huh? And right now, Lenegis might not even be a safe option.
And at the same time, Danans are hardly likely to embrace Renans with open arms. If the issue is forced, things could turn dire. There is, after all, 3 centuries worth of hatred to overcome between us. And the victims of our rule have absolutely every right to feel animosity towards us Renans. Our own circumstances as the aggressors are irrelevant.
I didn't expect the former Lord of Menancia to be so down about people reconciling.
Menancia's fate was a stroke of good luck. There had been backlash over how it had been ruled, and I was blessed to have sympathizers among my ranks. Still, even now, there remain ardent dissidents.
But things can still change if you have the right people to help lead the way. Isn't that what you hope to achieve on Lenegis, after this is all over?
Indeed. I have fully accepted the burden of that responsibility. In that regard, I remain determined. On that note, I have something of a favor to ask of you, Alphen.
Oh? What is it?
I wish for you to serve as a mediator so that the Renans can live on Dana peaceably. As the one and only Blazing Sword, I suspect the Danans may listen to what you have to say when problems arise.
And I take it that you'll be the one to represent the Renans?
Yes. I realize that I'm asking quite a lot of you. However, the fact of the matter is that it will take time for Renans to re-enter Danan society without any bloodshed. That is why...
You're the same as ever, Dohalim.
Is it too much?
No, relax. You get so tense and formal when you're asking for a favor. Listen, there's no need for that. We're friends.
You're too kind. I can see you were raised well.
That's some high praise, Alphen.
Then I'll ask once again, this time just as friends. Alphen, will you help me?
You don't even need to ask. Of course I will.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, that's certainly a way for things to turn out here. We're gradually bringing things to close here for all the characters, and like them getting ready to wrap up their arcs if they haven't already, and whatnot. Also, I was about to say something and then I completely forgot. Oh yeah, the Doki did have her paw over her ears a second ago, and whatnot. Yeah, that's definitely a very strong Xenoblade 2 kind of story thingamabob as well there, now that you mention it. Overseer will in all likelihood remain with us for the time being, as its vital signs continue to show as stable. Despite their appearance, their biology is surprisingly close to us. Isn't that just fascinating? Isn't it crazy? I wonder, are Dan still not given surnames of their... Oh, I freaking read that before. Also, how have the, I was about to say, like, how have the two worlds of, like, Ren and Dana not, like, collided into one another by gravity? They must be, like, orbiting each other. Right? Yeah, it could well have a lot of Xenoblade influence. Could well be. It certainly seems like it sometimes. Overseer must be so pleased to be able to witness the transformation of Dana before it passes on. Wait. Oh, it gives like a check mark to show that I've talked. Oh! Has this been a thing this entire game and I never noticed it? It seems that when Lenegus was activated, no consideration was made for the safety of those in the residential corridor. Not that it matters. Once the plan is complete, Lenegus will serve no purpose. It's only logical there would be more pressing concerns instead. Barring the unforeseen developments that took place on Lenegus, everything has gone quite smoothly. Even if we were to notice such aberrations for ourselves, we would likely ignore them, as it's not our policy as observers to interfere. It shows a check mark to show that you've that you've seen that dialogue already. I never knew that. It's been a long road already, and there's still much to do. Thank you for your enduring support, Alpha. Yeah, then it's blue and there's a check. I never knew this. I'm mad. I can't believe this. How many hours do I have in this game now?
You're not the only one still trying to make sense of all this.
56
Believe
hours.
Me.
Really? You've never struck me as the type of guy to get hung up on these sorts of things.
Did you forget what happened back in Thistleum? Once my memories started coming back to me, I felt completely and totally lost.
It was really that bad for you?
Yeah, it was. But thanks to Law and everybody else, I remembered that I still had things out there worth fighting for.
Man, I think you might be a better guy than me, Alphen. All I can remember thinking was, when's this guy gonna get his act together?
Law.
I was too worried about repeating the same mistakes I'd made back with my dad, and running away from the truth. That was no way to live. And I've tried to stay strong, my way. But all this talk about other races and the world ending, if I can be honest with you guys, it's just all too much for me to handle right now.
I know this is going to sound strange coming from me, but maybe the key is not to worry too much about the big stuff right now.
Oh?
I used to worry all the time about my thorns, for obvious reasons, but I never really opened up to anyone about them. And when I realized my visions pointed to a threat that was bigger than me, I didn't know what I should do or who to tell. But that's when I finally got it. You guys were all there for me, to teach me what's really important. I just had to open up and listen.
In other words, if you let the big picture stuff get you all muddled up inside, you'll begin to lose sight of what you really care about. Yeah, I think you're right.
The thing that's most important, what I really care about, all I want to do is protect the people that really matter to me, to fight for them. That's good enough, right?
Not everyone is strong enough to fight.
Huh?
It's something your dad told me once when he was still alive. Law, you know you're strong enough to fight, and you're strong enough to protect the people you care about. Forget all the big stuff going on. Just don't lose sight of what you want to protect in the first place. Sound good?
Yeah, I think it does. It's like a big weight's been lifted off my shoulders. I'll fight to protect the people around me. Just like I always have. I think that's best.
Well, It sounds like everyone's learning from their past and using it to create a better future for everyone.
What about you, Shion? How do you feel about the origin of the Renans?
To be honest, I'm not really all that shocked, actually. I mean, I might be a Renin in the literal sense, but I've never really felt like one of them. Right now, it's kind of a mystery.
How do you mean?
Because for a really, really long time, all I ever thought about was how I was going to die. Not if or when, but how. I thought I'd die alone. That fate had me in its steely grip. I would have never imagined that I'd be traveling with someone like you, fighting to save Rena and Dana. I mean, how could I have? It's been going on for 300 years. All this tragedy and destruction. When you consider the Helganquil's part in all this, it's been even longer than that. It was Naori's hope that somehow, someone in the future would be able to stop it before it was too late. How it fell on us, of all people, to heed that call is a mystery.
I don't think Naori was hoping that we would just stop the world from getting destroyed. She considered me, a Danon, as a real person. And she very much cherished her own people, too. I don't think she wanted the world to be saved, just so they could go back to hurting each other. Oh, maybe this is what she meant.
Huh?
When we were talking to Kisara earlier, about all that stuff like everyone's needing to meet halfway and embrace each other's pain and suffering. She said that the first step down that path was for each of us to put aside our own hatred. That means forgiving other people, even and especially before they forgive you.
Forgiving. So it goes both ways, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I don't just mean forgiving things that happened in the past either. Conflicts will keep happening. If we have any hope of moving on and building a better future, we have to all learn to forgive each other.
You know, you're right. People can hurt one another without even meaning to. I know that better than most, thanks to these thorns.
It's not going to be easy getting past this pain. But if we can do it, I'm sure there'll come a time when we can all truly understand each other. I'm there with you, Shion. I too want to protect the world we live in, and all the people we care about. I think that's the very least I can do to repay Naori for everything that she did.
Yeah. I want a future that she would feel proud to live in, and I'm going to fight for it.
Whoa there, Savior Girl. We're here to save you too, you know.
Yes, I know. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I want to live, and that's the honest truth.
Well, is everybody ready to do what needs to be done?
I am. There's a lot to think about, but at the end of the day, Dana's still in danger. I don't care who we're up against. We'll kick their ass.
What are your thoughts, Alphen? I want to know what's on your mind, too.
Like Law said, if we have to fight the Great Spirit on Rena, then so be it. It's trying to rob us of our entire world, and it's going to take not just our home, but all of existence along with it. That alone is enough to make it our enemy. But it's not only that. One way or another, I think beating the Great Spirit is going to be tied to us saving Shion.
You're saying there's a chance?
You're referring to the vision of destruction we all saw in Lenegis, I take it?
Yeah. 3 centuries ago, the astral energy that appeared at the spirit channeling ceremony showed Naori that vision. And to hear Shion tell it, it's the same one that she sees from her own thorns as well.
Indeed. Shion's thorns are comprised of dark astral energy, the one type which we know is native only to Rena. And if Rena's great spirit is what's behind Dana's pending destruction, then...
Shion's thorns are the Great Spirit? It's not actually on Rena like we thought?
We don't know anything for certain. At the very least, though, I think it's possible her thorns are a part of the Great Spirit.
While the main body resides in Rena.
Shion.
If these thorns really are a part of Rena's Great Spirit, I'm going to go over there and give it a piece of my mind and then some.
The question is, how do we confront it? Suffice it to say, that flower growing out of Rena is enormous, large enough to house the will of an entire planet. The Wedge and Lennigus were both hard enough for us to overcome in their own right. This is an altogether greater challenge for merely 6.
And we only know about the Thorn's connection thanks to Naori.
Hevric 35 has been observing the Great Astral Spirit this whole time. It wouldn't ask us to fight it unless it has a plan of some sort. Let's go see what that is.
Well, members who have I don't know why I show my mouse cursor. There we go. Members who have left
Our minds
return
are
to your
made
party.
up. Let's go give Hevric 35 our answer.
Okay, so during the last several sets of conversations in game, the conversation that was happening in the chat there was just talking about like how could Rena and Dana potentially be the way that they are, and I was kind of saying that like the only way that it could be like that is if they're both rotating around one another, essentially, while orbiting around the sun. They must be like orbiting together around each other while on an orbit around the sun in this solar system is what it must be. The idea was proposed of like what if they were just like orbiting around the sun individually together, but if that was the case, then they just like slowly be pulled together and then collide like that still. So they would still have to be like rotating around one another while doing an orbit around the sun. And the reason why from Dana you maybe never saw the other side of Rena is because if Rena's been like that for a long time, where a lot of it is missing. That planet's not really going to have a lot of mass compared to a planet like Dana that has a lot of mass as a full and like intact planet. So it is possible it could be like a situation like Earth and the Moon, where the two of them essentially are over time slowing one another's rotations. But it's been long enough by now that the Earth has essentially made the Moon's rotation be perfectly in time with its orbit around the Earth, which is why we only ever see one side of the Earth. Like, from here on the Earth, you can't ever see the other side, unless you're sending out satellites to go, you know, check stuff on the dark side of the Moon, which we have. But, like, here yourself with, like, a telescope on Earth, you're never going to be able to see the dark side of the Moon, because its rotation has slowed so much that it's now perfectly, well, almost perfectly in time with its orbit around the Earth. And the Moon is also gradually slowing down the rotation of the Earth as well. Like, sometimes super far in the future, a day is going to be 30 hours instead of 24, and someday even farther than that in the future, a day is going to last 40 hours, and so on. I don't know if our species will even still exist by then, but who knows, like a really long time in the future. So, it is possible that Rena, as the planet with much less mass, now that we know that the freaking main part of the planet is missing, most of the planet's just gone, maybe its rotation got slowed down by Dana so much that it just always has the same side facing Dana, the same as our Moon always faces the Earth. Or maybe, I don't know, how would that work with like a planet where it's like a weird apple core kind of thing, where it's like a lot of it is over here, and then there's like a long kind of freaking tube bit, and then there's the other bit. Maybe because that's the bit where most of the mass is, that's the bit that's being attracted the most, and it has nothing to do with all the stuff that I was listing out. Maybe it's because the front-facing side, the side that faces Dana, is the part that has the most mass, and then it's just like a much less massive freaking straightaway to the other side, where there's a small other bit of mass at the end. That is probably more likely now that I think about it. And again, I doubt that the developers of this game thought about like scientific accuracy in mind when they put this together. But just thinking, if this was real, that would be the explanation for it, right? But yeah, some people joked at this part too, wondering how Shion's ancestors would have been able to reproduce if they had thorns too, but I think Shion's just more intense. It's getting close to where its final stage could well be. Could well be if that's what it was or something. But center then, it'd have gravity there, wouldn't it? Because it's hollow, but it wouldn't be pulling on the outer crust. Like if it's hollow, it doesn't have inner crust. Where gravity originates for any object is not right at like the dead center of it. It's at its center of mass. So if you've got an object, if you've got like a long beam and there's like a 3 kilogram weight over here and a 1 kilogram weight over here, then your center of mass is not going to be the center of the beam. It's going to be like over closer towards a 3 kilogram mass. It's not going to be right there, right in the center of it, but it's going to be way closer to that than the 1 kilogram mass over here. It's why if you make like a lever or something like that, I could make like a lever on my desk like right now, for example. It's why if I freaking, I don't know, balance this calculator on my phone, it's going to balance just like that because its center of mass is on top of the phone. But the moment I put it over here, all of a sudden it falls. Its center of mass is no longer located on top of my phone, so it falls. And same thing for like the other side. If its center of mass is over there, then that's what's going to happen. It'd be better if I had a more misshapen object with one clearly heavier side, for an example. I guess this pencil, this mechanical pencil that I have here, what's something smaller I can like put it on? How about this like keychain flashlight here that you can't even really... It doesn't have a light anymore. Oh, no, it does. It's just really weak. Oh, there we go. There's a light, almost. Like, this mechanical pencil here, its center of mass is not going to be the direct center point. It's going to be over here, because there's a lot more stuff over here. So its center of mass is probably somewhere around here. So if I try to put it, like, dead center on this flashlight, it's still gonna fall with this side over to the side. If I wanted to balance it, I'd have to, oh, now it's falling over to that side. I'd have to put it somewhere around here, which is a little bit closer to the top side than it is the bottom side, because that's where the center of mass is. So Rena would not have its center of mass be the dead center of the planet. Rena would have its center of mass be somewhere much closer to the Danon side, which would be a scientific explanation for why, assuming this was a real situation, why the side that Dana sees would be the only side that it would ever see, is because that's where the gravity would be the strongest, right? So that's the side that would be facing there the most often. But yeah, no, it has a major center of mass. Everything that exists has a major center of mass. Its major center of mass would just be like this pencil. Why am I saying pen? It'd be like this pencil, where it's like, it's not dead in the center where I'm holding it. It'd be somewhere closer to this side over here because there's more things over here. That's just where the center of mass would be on Rena. Assuming that this is like the big side of land that's facing Dana, its center of mass would be somewhere around here. And its long beam and like slightly smaller mass would be a weight over here, but its center of mass would still be somewhere like much closer over here because that's where the majority of the mass is. So that's where that would be. And everything that has mass has gravity. So
if the Sovereign and Maiden were originally boot-up programs,
if you have mass, you have gravity.
What about now?
Even with
you have gravity,
ruins,
even.
And the Renaissance alma stolen, Lenegus is functioning fine.
This mechanical pencil has gravity and pulls things towards it.
Doesn't appear to now.
It's just the Earth's gravity is so strong that we don't notice the gravity between any of
Then you're
us.
discarded like you're nothing?
But if we went and met up in real life,
More importantly,
and we were
who do they
standing
think
like
we are?
a meter apart,
We might
there's
not
still
even
gravitational
factor into
attraction
the list of
between us.
concerns.
I just hope everyone on Lenegus is safe.
Worst comes to worst, Lenegus is equipped with a large number of starships that people can escape in. As long as the whole satellite doesn't suddenly explode or something, they should be fine.
Wait, explode?
In any case, if we're truly going to make a difference, it's on Rena we're needed, not Lenegus. The people there will be fine, I'm sure of it.
Right.
Okay, I have a better example, actually. Here's a better example if I take it off my keychain. Here's my car key. This is the key to my freaking rinky-dink car. You could find, like, an exact center point like, try to find the exact center point. But if I, you know, lose my grip a little bit, this is the side that's going to fall, because that's the side that has more mass. So its center of mass is going to be somewhere closer to, like, over here, because that's where more stuff is. So if I loosen my grip here, it's not going to fall. Even if I hold it somewhere over here, then it'll fall a little bit, because its center of mass is, you know, somewhere closer to the right. But if I try to hold it right in the center and I loosen my grip, that's the side that falls, because that's the side with more mass. So your center of mass is where essentially your gravitational attraction is, which in the case of my car key would be somewhere around here-ish, where it's like not quite in the center of like the big bit. Like there's still this whole beam to account for, but it's a lot less massive than this here. So the center of mass is probably going to be somewhere around like there-ish, like a little bit into the black area. Not the direct center of it. If I hold in the direct center of it and loosen my grip, it's still going to fall that way. But if I hold it at about here and I loosen my grip, nothing happens, because I'm holding it around its center of mass. So your center of mass is where your gravitational attraction lies, and everything that has mass has gravity. So, like, even my full keys here. Like, if it was, if these two things were just floating in the middle of the universe, eventually they would reach one another, because they slowly pull to each other. Everything, if you have mass, you have gravity. That's the rule. So, even every single person that exists has their own gravitational pull to wherever their center of mass is, for example. Like, if I was floating out in the middle of the universe in a complete vacuum with no other external forces, and this pencil was, like, beside me, eventually this pencil would hit me. I might be dead by then, because our mass is, like, so small compared to, like, a planetary scale. I'd probably be dead before it reached me. I don't know how strong the gravitational pull would be in a vacuum, but everything with mass has gravity. So it couldn't be that the Rena just wouldn't have gravity. Where am I going here? Well, everything has its own gravity. It's just that, like, this pencil right now has its own gravity. It's just that it's so small and it's so overtaken by Earth's gravity that you're never going to notice this pencil having its own gravity. You're just going to notice the Earth's gravity on it, because the Earth's gravity is so much stronger than the pencil's. But technically, it's not just the Earth that's pulling the pencil to it. The pencil is also pulling the Earth to it a little bit, technically. But, you know, with an object as massive as Earth, you're not really going to notice the Earth moving up towards its pencil. It's not really a thing that happens. But in theory, if you got, like, every single human in the world and put them into, like, I don't know, a single state in the US, and everybody jumped at once, the Earth would technically move a little bit off of its course. Just the tiniest little smidge. And then while we're in the air, then the gravity of all of us would, you know, pull the Earth to us, but way, way, way more so, the Earth would pull us back to it. And then by the time we all land on the ground again, then the Earth would be back to what it was just like a second ago anyway. But yeah. Well, it's not that it's interfering. All this other stuff has its own gravity. It's just so insignificant that we're never really going to notice it, is the thing. Like, I have gravity. I have my own gravity. This calculator has its own gravity. It's just so insanely small when you, like, put into scale just how large the Earth is. Like, it's not... Gravity is not the Earth is, you know, an entity that is allowed to have gravity due to its size. And, you know, the Earth itself is what's pulling me towards the ground. It's more so like, this chair is pulling me towards it. The carpet underneath the chair is pulling me towards that. The dirt under the foundation of the house is pulling me down. The freaking layers of the Earth under that are pulling me towards it. It's like the net of all the things that make up what's under us on the Earth that result in us going down to the ground. So every single speck of dirt is technically going to be pulling you towards it. And every single one of those little specks that make up the Earth pulling is what results in, like, such a large net force total that we notice gravity pulling us down. Where the hell am I going? I need to go to another level. I need to actually rest up to get that one little bit of CP back. And the reason why anything that has mass has gravity was explained by Einstein, who described space-time, where he was, I believe, the first one to propose the idea that, do you want to cook up anything right now? More dropped items out. Sure, whatever. Let's do that for funsies, I guess. is because it was proposed that what if we used to think for a long time that space and time were like completely separate entities. Like they were different aspects of the universe, but they were a separate thing. Never took physics class in high school, so not really that smart when it comes to massive gravity. Learned quite a bit today. Should be a teacher someday. I've thought about that. Like my current goal is like gaming industry kind of stuff. I've thought that like an interesting backup plan could be a teacher. But the reason why anything with mass, this isn't the way to freaking go. The reason why anything that has mass has gravity is, where am I going? Was it the central level? Was it the lower? I don't even know. I'll freaking find my way eventually. Is because space and time are essentially one and the same. Space-time. Where for a super long time, we used to think that like space and time were separate thingamabobs. Well, you can evaluate them separately, but they're interconnected in sheets of space-time that essentially make up the universe. So if you have mass, if you are a thing that takes up space in some way and you have mass, then you are essentially bending the sheets of space-time around you. And an interesting property of the universe is that everything essentially wants to go to equilibrium. Like everything has a neutral kind of state. Like if you have a spring and you stretch it out super far and you release it, it's gonna compact back in. Or if you press it in a whole bunch, then you release it, it's gonna stretch back out again. Or if I go back to my freaking car keys, whatever these things are called, I don't know what they're called. But if I do this and I release it, it's gonna go back to what its equilibrium state is. Like there's a lot of things that have equilibrium states, and I guess the equilibrium state of space-time would just be having nothing existing in it, I guess. Because the reason why everything that has mass has gravity is because it's bending the sheets of space-time around it, and the space-time that it's bending is essentially pushing in, or it makes like a curved kind of formation. So gravity is not, a lot of people think of gravity as like a pulling force, like you're being pulled towards Earth, and I was even using the term pulling earlier just because it's such a commonly accepted term. But realistically, gravity is actually a force of like the space-time sheets around you pushing you down towards other masses. In a way, is a way to think about it. Another way that you can visualize it is when I was growing up, there were in malls sometimes, there were these machines that you could like, well not machines, but they were like these kind of dome things. It was like a funnel kind of thing that you could find in the hall of some malls. And you could put like a coin into the side, and the coin would like spiral down and down and down until it fall into a hole right at the bottom. Anything with mass bending the space-time around it is essentially making one of these funnels. And that's also kind of what's responsible for orbits and gravity and all that stuff. Like the Earth rotating around the sun is kind of similar to how if you put a coin into like one of these big funnels, it'll spin round and round and round and round, while slowly getting closer technically, but you know, it'll go down there eventually, at least in the case of the coin. And something like an orbit, if you have like the kind of golden area for velocity of orbit, then you could in theory keep on orbiting without ever getting closer, because that's all that orbiting really is the perpetual state of falling. We're on this ramble now, I may as well finish it now. Like for example, anything that's orbiting around Earth is yeah, it's like the curvature of space-time, essentially. Of the sheets of space-time is the way that we understand. It's really cool that we currently have like an explanation for gravity. As far as I know, we still don't know why magnetism is a force in the universe, unless that's something that's been discovered and I never got the memo. Like, I'm pretty sure magnetism is still a force that like, we know it exists in the universe, and we can measure it and we can do things with it. We don't know why it's a force that exists in the universe. And that was the case for gravity for a long time. It's like, we knew about it, we knew how to measure it, we knew how to do all kinds of things with it. We didn't know why it existed for a really long time. Nowadays, we have an explanation for that. I'm still on the edge of my seat waiting for the day that we have an explanation for magnetism, which, who knows, maybe there was already an explanation and I never got the memo. And I'm losing my mind. But as far as I'm aware, that's the case. But something very interesting about, since I'm on this ramble now anyway, about gravity and such, is anything orbiting, the reason why it orbits is because it's in a perpetual state of falling, essentially. So, like, if you're in the International Space Station, for example, orbiting around Earth, then you're not really in space, technically. You're just in a constant state of falling towards Earth. And on hearing that, you would think, like, wait, wouldn't you, like, hit the Earth eventually? Because, no, it's not I don't, well, magnetism is complicated. I'm not gonna pretend I know how magnets work. I've taken lots of physics classes that explain freaking magnets and magnetism and charges and all that stuff. Like, we know about, you know, the charges of atoms and how you can, you know, give something an electric charge with a whole bunch of electrons, and we know that electricity and magnetism are, like, directly intertwined in some crazy way, considering we can make things like electromagnets. The world's a fascinating place. But yeah, Guzman's description of gravity made you think the Earth is gravity-shaped for some reason. Sorta. I don't know how it'd be best to visualize the gravity around the Earth, if it's like a dome that's like larger than the Earth and press it down. Because there's also like weird things. Like there's weird things like gravitational waves, for example, where it's like, you know, the further away two objects are, the less gravitational attraction is going to be between them, but there's still technically going to be an attraction that gets stronger and stronger the closer they are. But since we're anyway, before I go do the cutscene over there, the last bit of this ramble, how orbits are all just essentially the perpetual state of falling. If you're in the International Space Station, memeing, but it's still an interesting thing to think about anyway. Like if you're in the ISS, you're not really like floating in space. You're just falling towards the Earth. It's the same as if there are literally planes that you can take that go really high up and then just start falling to like simulate what it's like to be in zero gravity, so you can feel what it's like to be in space in one of these planes. I want to go on one of those planes one day. They seem hella fun. So, you know, as a regular person, there are ways for you to experience zero G's like that. But falling in a plane like that is essentially the same idea as why you float in the International Space Station, is it's just a perpetual state of falling. And the reason for this is because if you have a strong enough velocity around a body, you will just never hit it. Like, for example, if, like, let's say this is the surface of the Earth, this calculator, and you are on, like, a really tall diving board that's, like, up here. If you jump off, you'll go like this. Let's say you jump forward a lot faster, then you'll go over here. Let's say you jump way faster, then you might land over here. And maybe if you have like a sphere, I don't know, spherical. Let's just pretend this controller is spherical. Let's say that you jump really, really far, then maybe you start going around a decent bit, but then, you know, you didn't have enough speed and you collide. But if you get that like perfect sweet spot kind of speed, you can be in a perpetual state of falling at all times and never hit the ground. Where the reason why you're in this constant state is the pull of or the push, as we established earlier, of space-time, pushing you towards said body. And that essentially keeps you in this constant state, assuming you hit that, like, golden speed of velocity to, you know, constantly be falling that way in the first place. If you start slowing down, then you'll start getting closer and closer and eventually connect with it. And that's an actual concern for the ISS, because there's actually a lot of space junk rotating around the Earth, from like dead satellites to just random parts, even other rocks and junk. Like, but it's especially after human interference over the past, you know, 50, 60 years or something like that, that there's developed a lot of space junk orbiting around the Earth. So anytime the International Space Station collides with like a random rock or like a dead satellite or even just a random screw that happens to be floating around, guess what? That just slowed down the speed of the International Space Station. So it's an actual concern for humanity that we actually need to like push it out more every once in a while. Push it out and like give it more of its speed every once in a while. Not super duper often, but it is something that we do need to do every once in a while. If we never did that, if we just left the International Space Station unattended for like a really long time, it would eventually crash into the Earth. Like, in theory, if there was no space junk for it to collide with, and it had like the perfect speed to constantly be orbiting, it should be able to be there like infinitely. But that's unrealistic. So we do need to give the ISS a little bit of a boost every once in a while, because it collides with stuff every once in a while. And there is also a slight atmospheric drag. Like, we like to think that, you know, up at places where the ISS is, that there's no atmosphere. There's just very little atmosphere. So there's still, you know, the occasional air particle up there that, you know, it might collide with, that you know, slows its speed by like such a tiny minuscule amount. So I guess in theory, the perfect freaking situation there is no perfect situation, I guess. But yeah, there's that. But yeah, and space is scary, like your planet, or maybe clean up our orbit radius. People have been trying to devise plans to like clean up all the space junk that's up there. And it's there's some very interesting like articles and videos that you can find on that subject. But the short version is it's very much easier said than done to clean up all our space junk that's up there. It is a much easier said done kind of thing there. But yeah, one day the ISS will end up crashing into the Earth. As long as we don't, you know, keep on helping it to make sure that it stays up there, at least. Like, one day, when the day comes that, you know, humans stop helping it for one reason or another, maybe we've discontinued it, or maybe maybe humans don't exist anymore. If we discontinue the ISS, we'd actually need to, like, dismantle it so that, so that it wouldn't crash into the Earth and, you know, be devastating for wherever it hits, I guess. But yeah, I think one day they'll make a new model of the ISS in the future and let the one we have now crash to Earth. No, they need to, like, dismantle that in a controlled way. Or just, like, make special modules that could connect to parts of it that when it entered, like, parts of the atmosphere or, like, deploy a parachute or something. Like, make special devices that connect to parts of the things in space. And then just, like, send it to Earth, and once it's reached a certain altitude, the devices that you connect deploy, like, a parachute or something. I don't know. Because, unless they just calculated, like, the math that people calculate for stuff in space is like hella accurate. I have like a massive respect for everybody that does that. Like, you want to calculate how to send a freaking satellite to a specific place in the solar system, there's a lot of math that goes into that. Like, what time of year do you launch it? Where will all the planets be exactly in their orbits at that time of year? Will this planet be in this one place by the time the satellite gets that far, so you can use its gravity to slingshot your satellite to the place it's actually supposed to go? Like, all the kinds of crazy things. So with all the freaking complicated math that we know, I guess it's possible that, like, it could technically be calculated for how to get the ISS to crash into, like, the ocean or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a thing that was calculated, maybe. But, I don't know. Yeah, that could well be the case if that ever wound up being the thing. It'd have to be way down the line. I'm pretty sure the ISS is, like, the most expensive project in human history, I think. Don't quote me on that, because I don't know for sure. But I'm fairly certain, off the top of my head, that the ISS is the most expensive thing, like, ever created in human history. But yeah. Yeah, it could be basically, like, being hit by a small meteor, or, like, it would have to be done in a very controlled way, or some ways to, like, increase atmospheric drag. I don't know how it all be done. It's a very complicated, a very fascinating kind of thing. I'm actually taking an astronomy class right now in university. The midterm in that class freaking destroyed me, but the midterm results recently came in, and it turns out that midterm destroyed everybody, considering the class average in person was 51%. And the class average for those that did the test online was 47%. So, I'm glad it wasn't just me that felt like that test was certainly something. And that's understandable there, Guzman. I hope you enjoy your lurk. I hope you enjoyed this freaking discussion about space stuff. Which, again, I don't claim to be, like, an expert in these fields, so if I mentioned anything here that's, like, incorrect, please don't fault me for it. I am not a professional, but there's that.